So, can you just tell me a little bit about what your name is, who you are, and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Liz Reitzig. I am primarily and most importantly a mother. I have five small children, and it was in the process of determining what food we wanted to feed our family that got me involved and kind of catapulted me into this whole food freedom movement. Because when the government told me I couldn't feed my children what I know is best for them, by making it illegal or by criminalizing me for the food choices, uh, that kind of got me going. It got me upset.
Sure. Okay, so I want to kind of talk about some of the issues that are obviously going on. The first question we have is SWAT type raids on small dairy farmers sound kind of like a Brave New World nightmare, but those raids are real. So, to what extent are rights protecting organizations like the ACLU involved in lessening the power of agribusiness firms, excuse me, and protecting small farm families?
Well, right now, you know, the SWAT type raids on farms are happening. It is real, sadly, and it's happening to good, honest, hardworking American farmers. And groups like the ACLU just have not yet shown an interest in working on any of these issues or working with any of the farmers specifically who have been targeted. If they have shown interest, I'm not aware of it. But there have been efforts that I am aware of to get them involved and get them interested, and there hasn't been a response from them as of yet.
Okay. Are there other kinds of rights protecting organizations that are involved? Are there people that are trying to do something?
Well, certainly there's people who are working to try to correct some of this, and it's a lot of grassroots activists. So it's not led by a big organization. It's not led by rights groups, so to speak. It's led by the moms who are passionate about this, who want to be able to feed their families without being criminalized for their food choices, and by the farmers who are willing to stand up and fight this tyranny and aggression.
Yeah. So it's a people's movement, basically.
It really very much is, yes.
Monsanto's former VP of Public Policy is the Deputy Commissioner of the FDA. Are there other examples of such obvious conflicts of interest? If so, can you share any of those?
Well, I know there are. I don't have the names and positions off the top of my head, but there is a revolving door between big agribusiness and the FDA and the USDA. And there's also, there are some instances of regulatory people getting involved in elected political leadership. So there's a little bit, there's both, but there is that revolving door, and the loser is the small farmer and
Sure.
you and me and the moms who want to get the good, wholesome food from small, local, sustainable farms.
Sure. Although 40 other countries are committed to biotech labeling, our own FDA has never endorsed the practice. How can ordinary citizens, because this is a movement that's going to be changed by ordinary citizens, how can they bring pressure to bear on the policymakers to change these things?
Well, one of the best things that everybody can do is choose food from a small source. So go to your local farm, go to your local farmers market, and support them. Use your dollars to revive these rural economies. Because when you go directly to a farmer's market or directly to the source and go buy a dozen eggs from a farm that, maybe it's 15 minutes away or whatever, but you're not only are you getting really high quality food in most cases, but you're also contributing economically to rural communities. And then your dollar goes a lot further in those communities. So that's really one of the best ways that every single person can immediately become involved is they can switch. They can switch their food. And maybe you don't want to switch everything at once. Maybe you want to start with buying a dozen eggs a week from a local farm. That's fine. That is legitimate. It's reasonable, and it's a very good start. Go ahead.
I can say even in major cities, this is something that you can do, right? Because I live in Dallas, and I have friends that are involved in a co-op, and so they get their fruits and vegetables and everything, and that's right in the middle of Dallas.
Right. And there's also CSAs, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And that's where a lot of farms will have options, whether it be a fruit CSA or a vegetable CSA. Some even provide cheeses and meats and dairy. But that's where you pay ahead of time, and then that farm, you're kind of investing in that farm, and then they make local deliveries to a lot of places within a city. So that's really another really good avenue to pursue for city dwellers or suburbanites that gives them fresh local food on a regular basis without a huge commute for them.
That's great. Because I think that's, I think it's a lot easier when people live in communities where there's farms close by and those things are readily available. But for people that don't really think, oh, well, I can't do that, that doesn't apply to me.
Right. Well, everybody, there's something that everybody can do. So like I said, you might start with something small, like you might go to your farmer's market and get a dozen eggs. That's a really great start. Anything that gets you moving in that direction. And then you might find that you want to start getting meat from that same egg farmer, or maybe they have a farmer friend who's selling chickens as well. And then, once you begin, the options really start opening up. But take that first step and get something local where you're buying direct from a farmer. You can talk to them, you can see their face. That's a really important step. Well, basically the big agribusinesses that produce genetically modified food, they're using absence of proof as proof of absence. So there's no, right now it's a big experiment. GMO foods are one big experiment, but without any controls, obviously. And so we don't yet know the long-term effects that these foods have on people or animals. We just don't know that. And for anybody to say that we do and that they're perfectly safe it's ridiculous. And you mentioned the chemicals that are on these foods. And so there's two separate issues. There is the fact that there's the GMO products are manufactured to withstand higher doses of toxic chemicals, and the fact that they are genetically modified, which is questionable in and of itself. So there's two strikes against them. But basically there's no valid scientific proof. There are industry funded studies that say some things, but when you go ask the average person, they don't know about it. And people who have researched GMOs, like I'm talking about mothers, fathers, just the average layperson who has researched it, they're not comfortable with them. So there's not good, valid scientific proof that anything about GMOs are actually safe.
Okay, I've got one more formal question. In November's general election, California citizens will have a chance to voice on the labeling of genetically modified foods. Are there any other states, do you know if there are any other states that are offering those kinds of ballot choices? And if so, who? And if not, how do we make California a national example? How do we follow their lead?
Well, that's a really good question about the California ballot initiative for GMOs. And what's so significant about that is that California actually is one of the leading economies in the whole world. And so if food manufacturers are forced to label genetically modified ingredients on food products in California, they will most likely, because of the economics of it, apply that same standard to foods they sell everywhere. So essentially, having California pass that would go a long way to having that a requirement elsewhere. I'm not aware of the other states and whether or not they have similar legislative initiatives, but I think that information is probably readily available through the Non-GMO Project.
But California in and of itself that's a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, California is huge. And if enough people get behind it and we put enough pressure on it and we get enough attention on it and ask people to vote a particular way, then there's a really good chance of it going through in a desirable way.
Sure. Okay, that's cool. I mean, that's an exciting possibility for sure.
It is, definitely.
Is there anything else that you can think of that might be really important for people to know? Because I think that there's a subset of people that really know about this movement, and then there's a lot of people that sort of have no idea that they can kind of get on board. And you talked about being able to get on board and start to buy locally and buy from local farmers and stuff like that. But is there anything else that's kind of important to know if you just don't really know enough about what's going on right now?
Well, everybody has their own starting place, and some people already know, like you said, some people already know a significant amount of what's going on. And I think one of the most important things to realize is that farmers and moms and just the average person are being criminalized for completely normal, natural, peaceful human behavior. And when people, in general, when they realize that, there is sort of a pause there, and people begin to wonder, like, well, what can we do to help change that? Because it's really a travesty now that, I've been turned into a criminal for bringing milk across a state line. And just because the FDA has given lip service to saying that they're not going to pursue me, it's still there in writing. And as long as it's there in writing, every time I go across a state line with a gallon of unpasteurized milk, I'm committing a federal crime. And that is just not how America should be working. And it's
this is a company that was built on its farms and its agriculture, all those things.
Right, exactly. And there is that once people begin to realize what is happening on our farmers and to our families, like they're willing to make that shift, that then they can put forth the effort. But it's just sort of this, a lot of people, just like you said, they're just not aware. And so they're not aware of what steps they can take. But there are some wonderful resources online to find local farms and to find producers near you.
Like, what kind of websites are there that people can go to?
Well, the Weston A. Price Foundation has a list of local chapters, and any of those local chapters can help people find access to real foods, including fresh, unprocessed milk. There's also eatwild.com, which is a wonderful sort of directory of farms and mostly meat and protein farms, but there's probably some of the others. There's also Local Harvest, which has a lot of the same resources, including they've got stores that sell local stuff, and farmers markets listed, and restaurants. A lot of people now are choosing their restaurant based on where the restaurant is choosing their food.
That's another way that you can do it, is to look for those kinds of restaurants and support your local restaurants that support local food.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep. That's cool, because I think for a lot of people that's an even easier place to start, because so many people eat out nowadays. So
absolutely. And local wineries. I mean, we're seeing a revival of local wineries everywhere, and that's another great place to get started, because even though it's wine and not food, what you're doing is you're still supporting that local economy, and then that support has a ripple effect within that community.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's all really great information, and hopefully that will help our readers be able to watch and get a better idea of kind of what's happening and just, some of the simple ways that they can help make a difference.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.